Incredible detail, real-time lighting, destructible environments, single-digit frame rates and god rays everywhere. Who can forget the first time they saw this scene from Crysis? The Crysis Remaster is here. It's alright, I guess. It looks prettier than the original, provides ray tracing without the need for DXR-compatible graphics cards, and is a lot less buggy to run. But I'm a tad disappointed by it, because it could have been more. The first and third games were the best looking things out when they were released, and while the second game had a rough journey, it looked great on the consoles and eventually looked great on PCs too. But in 2020, graphical competition is tougher than ever, and the Crysis Remaster just feels like a polished version of the original, with limited ray tracing support. Some parts of it look great, but other bits I'd argue are still overshadowed by the wonder that was Crysis 3. The remaster is similar to the original in that maximum settings will absolutely crush any PC out there. They're playing into the meme by calling the top quality settings "Can it run Crysis?", proudly claiming it will demand every last bit of hardware with unlimited settings, presumably because it turns the view distance up to a ridiculous level. But I think they're missing the point. I'll talk more about this in a bit, but you want comparison shots, so here they are. I'll start with the graphics settings in the remaster. There are several, ranging from low up to "Can it run Crysis?". Low, of course, looks the worst, though this being Crysis Remastered still looks very nice. What you give up are the shadows. They look quite blocky and don't extend far into the distance at all. The texture quality looks like a game from 10 years ago, and the ambient occlusion looks eerily similar to Far Cry 3's, where all objects cast a shadow behind them, regardless of how far away that might be. This only happens at low, and I assume was required so that the likes of the Switch could cope with this title. Moving up to medium makes it an acceptable standard. If your PC isn't the fastest, at least try this before dropping to low, because the extended shadow and draw distance, as well as better texture quality, makes it a lot more enjoyable to play. Foliage, of which this game has plenty of, no longer looks like splattery blobs of colour. Plus, if you game at medium, then you're safe in the knowledge that it looks better for you than for others who switch to low. High preset is about as far as you should bother going unless you have excess computing power to spare. It enables ray tracing, the textures for the most part are as good as they need to be, and the shadows no longer shimmer so noticeably, and they get that fuzzy kind of outline that you look at and go, yeah, that looks fuzzy, but also probably quite nice. Beyond high settings, not a lot changes up close. Some textures get better, like the banana box here, the ray tracing gets sharper, the draw distance on smaller objects gets greater, and the ambient occlusion across the whole image improves, though you'd struggle to notice the differences when actually playing the game. Oh, and the biggest change with these higher presets is that your frame rate drops considerably. The one time you'll want a preset above high is when staring out at distant scenery. The drawn shadow distance extends further out all the way through to the highest "Can it run Crysis?" option, which you can see here greatly improves, or at least darkens, distant hills and mountains. But aside from in these situations where you're wanting to get a nice new desktop wallpaper, you're probably better off at high preset, which will give you greatly improved FPS, which will aid you in more general gameplay. The other difference the top quality "Can it run Crysis?" setting has is for shadows to become increasingly diffuse the further away from the object that's casting it. And that's because the sun isn't a tiny point in the sky, blah blah blah. It's just unfortunate that running the game at top quality settings tanks the frame rate so greatly. GTA 5 had the same shadow effect, and it didn't slow it down anywhere near as much, as I recall. The big new feature in CryEngine, that they've been working hard on for years, is ray tracing. And it's not the sort that we've seen in other games. The effect seen in Crysis can be run even on older Nvidia and AMD cards. You might remember that demo of the drone flying down a street, which was when they first showcased this technology, but Crysis is the first large open game to support it. While I commend them for doing this, it comes with some pretty significant limitations of its own, which in a way I feel defeats the whole purpose of ray tracing in the first place. The reflections behave kind of like low quality versions of the actual world with extremely limited view distance. Almost like you're peering into a PlayStation 3 version of the world. Kind of like GTA 5's reflections, I guess. It does at least mean that even current console generations can do ray tracing, and on PC you won't have to get a DXR compatible graphics card to view it. But it seems a shame to go so far only to stop short of actual full-blown ray tracing done properly. Looking at this reflection, some trees pop in and out of existence, and it doesn't extend far enough to show the cliffs in the distance, and the less said about the character model the better. So yeah, it's a fake version of ray tracing, but it's cleverly done and will most likely be enough to get within spitting distance of the real thing in most situations, unless you literally find a mirror and stare into it. Later on in the game, spoiler alert, everything's made of ice, so you'd think it would be a great chance to showcase the tech. But this wasn't the case. Nothing reflected, apart from the vehicles. If you want reflective surfaces, this was the best example I could find. In its reflections, it showed other parts of the same vehicle. This is done with the combination of ray tracing and screen space reflections, which is why some bits of the reflection disappear as the camera moves, while others remain. This is likely done to strike a balance between system performance and close-up detail, and to mask the lower underlying quality of the ray tracing that's found in this game. I think we'll be seeing more of this kind of compromise throughout the PlayStation 5 generation. While we can already do full ray tracing, it does require a huge amount of processing power and could be argued is overkill for the task it needs to fulfill. The sort seen in Crysis, and probably Unreal 5, will make more sense given the hardware compromise. But like I've already said, it feels like it defeats the purpose of ray tracing in the first place, which is to simulate reality without any of the shortcuts or weaknesses. Being so close to achieving the real thing and then slapping a load of constraints and limitations onto it just feels like extra work to me. I've talked about the remastered edition, but how does it compare to Crysis? You can split it up into categories. First up, indoor areas, and this is where we see the biggest improvement. The interiors of Crysis were ugly. They looked like they didn't have any lighting at all. This didn't look good even for the time. It got away with it because it was made of destructible elements, so there was no way that it could fake the lighting in here, given the technology constraints at the time. But with the remaster, it's wonderfully lit with global illumination, and the bits that should be dark are darkened thanks to ambient occlusion. It's an unquestionable improvement. I particularly love how bright and colourful places bleed their colours out onto nearby surfaces, giving it all a warm glow. And this lighting all changes as you'd expect it to as the building changes or destructs. Another large improvement is to the distant scenery. There is a lot more distant detail in the form of rocks and trees, especially at higher graphics presets. Like you'd expect, this comes with a frame rate penalty. And I disagree with the depth of field and haze effects that they use to cloud it all up. There's more detail, but you can't always see it. Some of the textures are majorly improved too, like this banana box here, and the sand texture, which is nicely parallax mapped, even at lowest settings. But there's one change to the game that I find questionable, and that's to do with the artistic style of the game. The original often looked drab, understated or dark, but the remaster ups the brightness and saturation, and gives many of the surfaces new shaders. And I don't know if this is necessarily an improvement. The palm trees, for instance, I much preferred the older style, which gave the leaves a chic, waxy finish that nicely reflected sun or moonlight. The newer ones seem more like cloth to me. It could be that they mimic the subsurface scattering that goes on inside leaves more accurately. Maybe these are technically better. I just don't like them as much as the older ones, which I remember being so impressed with at the time. And I'm not sure about this guy's face either. The remaster's textures are higher quality, but there's something about the lighting and bloom effects that just makes it feel like an inferior console port to me. I can't put my finger on why. Take a look at this jungle scene. The remastered version's colours are much more saturated and far deeper. They're just two very different styles, and I think if people had to pick which one was the prettier, they'd choose the remastered edition. I think what they've done is to make Crysis a more traditionally beautiful game. They have airbrushed the island, upped the saturation, and have thrown all sorts of post-process effects at it to make it look better than real life. Problem is, that removes it from reality and throws it into the same classification as literally any other tropical island game I can think of. It ends up looking a lot more like Far Cry 1 or 3, which I always considered a more cartoony series. The original Crysis, on the other hand, felt grown up, gritty and sophisticated. And that's because it actually mimics reality. Before making the original game, the team went to Tahiti and took loads of pictures and set out to create the most realistic looking game that they could. You can see, from these extremely low resolution images, that they succeeded. Yes, the grass and polygonal edges give it away, but aesthetically speaking, it's difficult to tell which of these is the original photo because they recreated the feel of these environments so faithfully. Which is what's been removed from the remastered edition, which has instead prioritised a glamorised, fictional tropical island look. They've airbrushed the shaders and lighting to transform each level into a perfect tropical paradise. It's fine for them to do that, I just wish they had kept the original vision somewhere because it's the one I find more appealing. I guess they felt realism prevented the game from looking better. And I'm also not sure the remaster's visuals do justice to the hardware requirements at higher settings. For the original game, they created a pre-rendered movie called Core X, then set out to make a real-time game that matched, or surpassed, the look of that movie. It wasn't their intention to make something that slowed PCs down, it's just that they simply built the game to a certain level of quality. Since the original game, they redid Crysis for consoles using a newer, more optimised version of the engine, and I believe it's this that this remastered edition has been built from, since the same levels and stuff are missing. The benefit of this is that low settings in the remaster look vastly superior to the original. The original game on low settings is laughably bad, while at a glance, the remastered one faithfully retains the look of the higher settings. In fact, you could say it even looks better than the high settings do. I'm not going to benchmark in this video, I'd rather do that on slower hardware, but it will be interesting to see if the remaster runs better than the original. Imagine how incredible that would have been in 2007. In conclusion, if you want to play Crysis, you might as well play on the remaster, because on a technical level it is likely superior in every way, and I do prefer the way you don't have to manually change your suit function every time you want to jump, sprint or punch something. But I disagree with a few of the graphical design decisions that they've made. More could have been done, and while it's Crysis 2020, I don't think it looks good enough to be Crysis 2020. Oh Crysis, what a frustrating series you are. You tease us with greatness, only to eventually go down that tired old alien route every single time. Far Cry was great, until you had to fight the Trigens. Then with Crysis, that too was fun, until the aliens showed up. Then they reassured us that they had made the aliens more fun, and made the whole second game about fighting aliens. And it wasn't fun. Finally, it seemed they had learned their lesson, and they made the third game about fighting humans again, only to forget about that about 3 missions in, cramming the rest of the game full of bullet sponge aliens. The series has always been great when it's been an open world sandbox that lets you prey on humans, yet it never does more than to just tease of that before inevitably becoming an uninspired arena shooter again against dull monsters. Just because we have an overpowered suit, it doesn't mean we want overpowered enemies. We want to feel powerful, and to be able to use our abilities and stealth to outsmart human opponents. But while the team never seemed to understand what people liked about Crysis' gameplay, graphically they were on point. The games always worked as fantastic visual showcases for the engine they were based on, and despite my dislike for the artistic direction this remaster has gone in, it's all based on good tech. With Crytek's financial difficulties these past few years, I hope the remaster is a success. Firstly because the Unreal Engine needs competition, and second, so that one day we can get a proper, full-blown Crysis 4 that can be built from the ground up to look great, but also convincing. And please, no aliens this time.